Okay, skill one, activity one. And what your objective is to expand a student's knowledge of fractions from part of a whole, a part of a set, to a number line. What research has shown that when kids are able to work on or transfer their knowledge from part of a whole to part of a set to a number line, but a lot of kids struggle with number lines. There's studies that show that 90% of third graders could find 3/4 of a whole, but then when they're asked to find 3/4 of the number line, they're not able to do it. So again, we're looking to expand their knowledge to give them more depth, okay? To identify a fraction on a partitioned number line, and then to place a fraction on a number line that is not partitioned, okay? So we're gonna take a look. All right, the first one would be skill 1.1, activity 1. And what this is this is a mat, and remember you have to put a piece of plastic over it, a plastic sleeve. And this is really wide open. You have so many options that you can do. Well, the first one you can go ahead and say, okay, look at number line A, so your kids know what one it is, and then you have to explain to them. Say, all right, number line A, what is that partitioned to, or how many parts is that partitioned to? One of the number one mistake kids make when working on number lines, they count the hashes. They'll go 1, 2, 3. This number line is in thirds. But then what you need to do is go through and say, nope, that's not how it works. And what it is, it's actually a measurement from 0. So we'd almost say like, oh, look, this is one part right here, and this would be the other part right here. So if we were right here, this would be one part, right? 1, I have 1, and what is this? This is just 2 parts, so it's half, so it'd be 1/2, okay? And again, looking at the next one, say, okay, let's take a look at B and let's figure out the language. What is B partitioned into? And again, go ahead and use that and say you can block it off. So there's 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts. So we know that this number line is partitioned into thirds. And then if I was at this part right here, that would be the same as having it colored in because it's the space, this gap from 0 to that right there. And we know that this would be right here would be 1/3. All right, and then you could go ahead. So this one has halves, thirds, and fourths. And then the D one is wide open, right? You could go ahead. You've already had them working with partitioning. You could say, okay, cut it in half again, and then cut each one of those halves in half again. So now what you have right here is you have eighths. And then you could go ahead and say, okay, go ahead and label this. This would be 1/8. This would be 2/8. So you have a lot of freedom with what you do on these. But the first thing you want to do is establish the language. What is each one actually partitioned into? Then you could go ahead and say, okay, remember you could have your students, they all could have their own mat. You could just have this and you're projecting it to a small group or to a whole class. Then you could go ahead and draw dots and say, okay, I want you to tell me what fraction that we're on in this number line. All right. If you're in a small group too, you can go ahead and just take these little chips. And this is good because you won't say, okay, look at A, B, C, or D. You're just going to give them this chip that says 2/3. They have to go through and figure out, okay, what number line would this go on? Exactly where would I place this one at? Okay? And where would 3/4 go? And there's a chip 3/4, and they go and find the fourths and go ahead and put it there. And you can go ahead and make the chips. And then you can just go ahead, when you're done, you can go ahead and erase it and put another one on there too. And you can have them place the chips. So this is really wide open. You can have them, do a lot of different things, but the first thing, remember, establish the language. What is each one of these? This is a whole number line cut into halves. This is a whole number line cut into thirds and fourths, and then whatever you want to do with this one. Also, what you could do on this blank one is say, about where would 5/6 go? Now, remember, when we partitioned earlier back in lesson, I think it was lesson 1, activity 3 or 4, you would go ahead and they had to learn to sort of measure it out. So say, where do you think 5/6 would go? Well, that could be 1/5 or 1/6, and go ahead and have them measure out and do it that way too. So there's a lot of freedom with what you can do, but remember, establish the language. You can draw dots, have them draw their own dots, have them label it. There's a lot that you can do with that.